welcome to the latest episode of PacificSoc Today. I'm your host, Jarvez Hall, Executive Director of the Pacific Sociological Association. And I am excited that you have taken some time to be with us today. Today, we are excited to welcome our esteemed PSA President for 2024-25. It is the one and only Dr. Dwaine Plaza. Give him a big round of applause as he joins us here. Let me take my
Thank you very much,
pen off.
Jarvis.
Thank you so very much for being here with us. For those who don't know, not only is Dr. Plaza our esteemed president for 2025 and the chair of the PSA 2025 conference, but he is also a professor of sociology in the School of Public Policy at the world famous Oregon State University, a fine institute of higher learning.
So Jarvis, you say that because you graduated from OSU, so I'm really appreciative of the fact that we are now working together.
There's no bias here. There are other shows that have a no spin zone or no bull zone. We give it to you straight here at PacificSoc Today.
We
and
sure
it just
will.
so happens that I graduated from there. So yes, we do have to give it a little extra shine. But thank you for joining us today, especially here you are on your way across the pond.
Later today, I'm going to be leaving for Eastern Europe, and my wife and I are going to take our actual holiday for the first time in a year. And we're going to go to Vienna, Prague, Bratislava, and other parts of Eastern Europe while we're there. So we're going to go to a couple of small cities in those places.
All right. Well, fantastic. It sounds like a fun trip, and thank you for taking some time to make for us today, and thank your wife as well. I know if I would be trying to record a podcast before a trip, I would definitely get in trouble. So thank you for taking the time.
No worries.
We want to talk to you because we at the PSA is soon to be opening the call for submissions for PSA 2025, which is your conference. So I'm sure you're excited about it. But before that opens up, we wanted to ask you a little bit about the theme for 2025 and kind of what people should be looking at when they're thinking about their submissions, and especially if they wanted to tailor their work to the particular theme of the conference. Tell us a little bit about the theme and kind of how you derived at that for 2025.
Yeah, so thank you for asking. So the theme itself is really comes out of my own experience in teaching at Oregon State University for the last 26 years. And the theme is sociology in crisis. And what I want people to think about is what strategies are you as faculty or graduate student or undergraduate student, what strategies are you putting in place to have those conversations, those doing research in a culture of anti-DEI. So as we all know, particularly in the southern part of the United States, DEI is under a great deal of scrutiny, and actually in some states it's banned altogether. I see that as a kind of contagion that's moving across the country very slowly, but coming to a state like Oregon, Washington, and or California, not too far into the future. And we as sociologists really need to figure out ways that we're going to resist against that, but also how we're going to teach if legislation is to change. And we need to figure out together what are our ways in which we can actually come to terms with the culture also in our midst of white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and the ways in which that's manifesting itself also into taking away rights from women, taking away rights from LGBTQ people. And within that, we have to think about the ways in which we are going to be teaching potentially in those environments. So even if we're not necessarily on the East Coast, or if we're in the southern part of the United States, we also have colleagues who are there, and they are clearly trying to grapple with also how to teach in those situations where department chairs or faculty senates or presidents of universities are feeling pressure from state governments to know that if students report you in the classroom doing something that makes them feel discomforted, again, we have these discomfort bills that have already been passed in many states, but if they feel discomforted or some way feeling targeted, and it's up to them to figure out if they are targeted or not, based on their ethnicity or based on their gender or based on their ethnicity. For example, if they feel targeted and they record you or they report you, then it's incumbent upon the faculty member or the graduate student to actually show or defend themselves in this new culture that's emerging from the South. And again, it's a contagion moving to the West. So really, that's really where my idea for this particular conference came out of, is me watching the national landscape. And the national landscape of the United States, of course, is moving slowly in a certain direction. People have used the word fascism, and a lot of folks don't know what that word means, but ultimately it means where you become much more conservative and men become in charge, and men are in a situation where they're feeling a sense of displacement, a sense that they are also the targets because things have gone too fast. So what you want to do in a fascist environment is you want to put things back to the way in which they were historically. And how they were historically for the vast majority of time is that men have been in charge, particularly white Euro-American males in the context of North America and North America and Europe. And if men are in charge, then they are constantly passing legislation or passing laws that benefit themselves. If we go to just think back a little bit in terms of the history of the United States, and think about the laws which actually existed up till very recently, there were laws that actually said that African Americans, for example, as one group, could never go to court and testify against a white person. That African women could never be considered as being ever raped by white men. So those sorts of legislations, again, seem to us far away and distant and that sort of thing. But just think about it. This wasn't that long ago that those legislations actually existed that allowed those individuals to have ultimate power in a society where they couldn't be touched. We've clearly come a long way from there. But what I'm suggesting to you is that if we allow fascism to come back into play, those are the types of rules and laws that we were going to start seeing again, where there are going to be certain groups that are untouchable because they have been deemed as being better than or deemed as doing always the right thing. They're morally on the higher ground, et cetera, et cetera. And so therefore, laws and rules should not apply to them in the same way as they apply to everybody else. Again, evidence of that comes to us, even if you think about the current campaign that's going on here in the United States, where Republicans are certainly suggesting to us that not everyone should vote. Not everyone is competent enough to vote. And they say that in a sort of undertone way that they also are doing everything they possibly can to remove the vote or remove the ability to vote for everybody by, again, passing legislation or passing rules that say you have to fulfill all of these criteria before you can actually have the right to vote. So to put it shortly or succinctly, I am really interested in understanding how these processes today have manifested themselves in history, but also how they can potentially be policies that get reenacted again in our not so far into the future. And I want us sociologists to be able to be in San Francisco next year and talking about those sort of things and having conversations about how this particular manifestation of, I'm going to call it the sort of the new Jim Crow, or the new ways in which people are able to create a hierarchy once again in more blatant ways, that this potentially could be a situation where we as teachers need to be knowing how to teach within those margins and being able to still have conversations with our students and freedom in the academy to do research in these areas. Because once again, one of the other outcomes of what's happening right now in many universities I'm going to call it the Southern Belt of the United States, is that faculty are even starting to feel pressure about the types of research they do and how that research is actually going to be funded.
Oh, yeah.
So that certain types of research are never going to be funded anymore because it empowers certain people to actually be making discoveries or making findings that go against the current social order.
Yes, and that is very pointed. It made me think about how so many of these things that are coming into play are part of the old playbook.
Mhm.
And so those things about, for example, voter integrity stuff,
Mhm.
those are how, there used to be the poll taxes and
Mhm.
the poll tests
Mhm.
that were designed to discourage, in particular, Black folks from voting.
Mhm.
A lot of the kind of racial massacres in our history were a direct result of Black people voting. And
Absolutely.
so and especially how this really points to sociologists is what you just said right there at the end is, not that the other parts weren't either, but in particular what you said at the end is not only is, and people tend to talk about something being under attack, is usually hyperbole, but you're actually seeing that now where started with affirmative action. It
Mhm.
started then and went over to, well, it started with critical race theory
Right.
and then went to affirmative action and then
Mhm.
went to DI. And then
Mhm.
now you're seeing in some states where they're starting to put restrictions on sociology
Mhm.
as a study. So I believe it's in Florida where sociology, they moved it out of the general ed
Mhm.
category.
Mhm.
And some other states, I believe, are doing something similar.
Mhm.
And what's starting that chilling effect that you have, where folks that are doctoral students, are master's students, are
Mhm.
thinking about what their field of study is,
Mhm.
because they do eventually have to come out and get a job
Right.
after their studies. So they're
Mhm.
like, hey, I know I want to do this particular area in critical race theory, but if I do that, then I can't get a job likely in these states because
That's right.
somebody's going to point to that on my that's on my CV, or that was my thesis,
Mhm.
that was my dissertation.
Mhm.
So you're seeing those elements in the research area, in the teaching area, and
Mhm.
in the applied professions area as well. So
Mhm.
whatever your sphere is in sociology,
Mhm.
this theme for the conference is really hitting you, and it's an opportunity for us as professionals to be able to sit down and not only have the space to research and present how these things can be impacted as a result, but for us collectively to talk about where's that space in the academy, where are we going to find support, what happens if I'm in a state where this is happening, what happens if maybe I'm not in a particular state where it's happening, but maybe my geographical area uh,
Mhm.
pushes a little bit more for that, or the trustees on the board
Mhm.
are pushing for that. So we're seeing these challenges come in a lot of different areas, and I really feel that this topic is very poignant on that. And so, any other thoughts on that
What-
you want people to think about as we open up the call for submissions? And I know we have our various different areas that we tend to use in most years, and we're going to follow similar areas, and then topic, some of our committees will actually have some other topics as well. But what's some things you might want people to consider as they're preparing for the call for submissions?
Well, again, thank you for that connection to the conference. So I'm really interested in people thinking about the systemic nature of how this whole process works. And systemicness means ultimately that it's built into the DNA of institutions, and it's built into the DNA of the ways in which society functions. And so that can manifest itself in terms of public policy. It might manifest itself in terms of the way in which people on a day-to-day basis operate, and they don't realize is actually what their lives and their lifestyles actually affect other people quite negatively. It's been a warm summer so far here in Oregon, and I was just over at our community pool here in my housing. It's called a sort of a community, and it's a shared pool. We have over 250 units in the pool in the area, and they all have access to this public pool. And I was telling my wife yesterday when we were over there, I said, you know, if we were back in the 1960s, this pool that we're at right now would be segregated. And it'd be segregated because, to begin with, people like she and I, we're both people of color, could not live in this neighborhood. That'd be one thing. That would be a segregation right there because we likely wouldn't be sold a house in this area. And another aspect of segregation also was public policy. And so you had swimming pools up until the 1960s being, and public swimming pools, that is, not just swimming pools in general, public ones, had signs up that actually said basically that this pool was not to be used by people of color. And it's a whites only pool. And I want you to think about the ways in which that same process took place on trains, on airplanes, in neighborhoods, and in just the way in which we function in our day-to-day lives. Schools, of course. And as legislation started unfolding, clearly you had resistance. And that's another theme I want people to pick up on. And what has been the resistance to change in ways in which people have taken measures to resegregate themselves? And I'll touch on schools here. So when schools did become desegregated, one of the things that we saw quite fast was the emergence of these private schools. So who are these private schools typically targeting? Typically targeting wealthy families or wealthy enough families that they could actually take their children out of public school. And oftentimes these are white people and put them into these private schools where once again, they could be resegregated into an all-white environment with white teachers, white pupils, and so forth. And so once again, I'm asking our delegates to think about subtle ways in which some of this resegregation is going on again here in the United States in terms of the ways in which we operate on a day-to-day basis. And we actually see it in front of us, but we don't necessarily recognize it for what it is. I'll give another example here where I'm about to travel, and I know that when I get to the Portland airport, there are certain parts of the Portland airport that are zoned for whites only. And let me clarify that. If you go to those executive, if you ever have a chance to go into those executive lounges that are hidden in airports, they're oftentimes the American Airlines executive or the Alaska Airlines executive lounge. That's when you really start to see segregation replaying itself again. Yes, you do see a trickling of people of color in there, a trickling, but the vast majority of people of color that are in those areas are usually people pushing brooms, cleaning the area, manning the desks, and so forth to allow people to come in and out. But the vast majority of people that are inside are usually white American folks who are flying first class or business class or have access to those clubs. So once again, I'm just having people think about this idea of the resegregation of the United States in a culture that, again, is starting to percolate and ask questions around, have we gone too far? And I'm sure people have heard that adage a number of times. Have we gone too far in the United States? Have we given too many rights away? Similarly, another group that's actually in the crosshairs of this new sort of reemergence of fascism, in my opinion, are the trans gendered folks in our society. These are folks who are clearly the targets now of the cultural wars. And so if you want to look at the ways in which you can find a scapegoat, you can see how that particular group or the LGBTQ community are being used now as a scapegoat for everything that's bad that's going on, that our society has degraded itself. And we are now in a situation where we need to slow down on legislation, slow down on changes, slow down on the rights we've given those people, and actually take some of them back. Another group I'm going to focus on too in this thought process is also women. And so as we think about the ways in which women have also become now the targets of this new fascist, not new, but this ongoing fascist regime, is that women have been given too many rights, and they've been given the right to actually control their bodies, which means they can actually control their fertility. And when you give women that right, all of a sudden men feel they've had a right taken away from them, and that is to essentially know that they can reproduce themselves. And I want to be very specific about these new attacks against women. It is specifically targeted mainly towards white American women first and other women after that. Again, I want to go back to history, and we start seeing it within history. We see that women of color have been historically sterilized, unbeknownst to themselves. Now, that goes totally against this idea that all children are precious, right? So when we reverse that idea and start working backwards, we start to realize it's not all children that are precious. It's actually white children that are the most precious. Therefore, we need to reproduce that group. And hence the reason why this legislation that's come out of the Supreme Court, which actually strikes down the right for women to have abortions, is really targeted towards that one group of women who they want to reproduce. They want them to reproduce big time, because the feeling is, of course, a new theory. That's actually not even a new theory, but it's called displacement theory. And that theory is essentially means that white American folks are really afraid of them. Some of white American folks are really afraid that their race, quote unquote, is essentially becoming extinct because those other races, as they see them, are reproducing much faster. So therefore, you need to figure out ways in which to make white women not have the choice of ever aborting or controlling fertility in a way that you can then ensure that that particular race of people continues its ability to exist.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that for now.
And this is evident, and I know some folks are often, which I always find interesting. You know, when you have conversations and you talk about race, and you know, one, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. A lot of people think, "Oh man, how come if you know the PSA every conference is every conference is about race?" And first off, there are over I believe there are 20 over 20 topic areas, and there are some that address race directly. There's a race and ethnicity, a race and gender. Uh, uh, there is a section on for those who are doing research on Black sociology. There are some of those who are doing research on Asian and Asian American sociology. There's a section on indigenous sociology, Latinx sociology, but we also have areas of rural sociology. So how is this impacting the rural areas? How is this impacting in urban ethnography? There's a section. We have arts, culture, and popular culture. What has been popular culture's response to some of these things? And you're seeing various responses in terms of music and art. You're seeing a lot public art spaces and how those things are being used in response to this. And so to come in and think that this isn't impacting society, this definitely is. You wouldn't be having a Supreme Court deciding things. You wouldn't have stuff on national television. You wouldn't have people protesting if it wasn't impacting our society. And if we are an organization of sociologists, we have to talk about what's going on in sociology.
You
So
sure do.
a lot of folks, oh, I don't want to talk about race. One, if you say that, that's usually coming from a place of privilege. But even if your research area isn't directly on race, maybe you're on your area's popular culture, this is an opportunity to say, hey, how does popular culture change in an anti-DEI space? You know, what is that looking like? When you're looking at an area potentially of families, how are family dynamics changing as a result of this? How's family planning coming? you know, you talked a little bit about the issue of abortion, and there's other things. I know IVF has been a hot topic recently as well. So all these things are part of this same piece. So please don't take away that there's only one way to address this particular thing, and that, hey, I'm doing something on IVF. How does that relate to anti-DI? There's a lot of connection there. What's going on in those spaces with a variety of topics, and we want all folks to come and share those, because those research things are important, and it's more important that sociology has a space to be able to dive into that, so that you have the academic freedom to research some of those things, even if those things make some people uncomfortable. Whether it's you know, I know especially families don't always like to talk about sexuality, but we have researchers that research into human sexuality and those things. And one of the things I believe you're going to bring back this year is some different book topics. When you're talking about the pool, it made me think of the Heather McGee book, The Sum of Us, which is a very interesting read. But we hope to have some books and some other, not only just book salons, but some other books available for people to buy at the conference. But one thing before I let you go and get on your trip, I know you got to get to it, but I do got to ask you about another cool feature outside of people being involved, not only in submitting. Make sure you only submit one, because some people want to submit 5 different papers. You know, let's not submit 15 papers to this. Everybody, submit your one. But you also are leading and championing the mentorship program, Mentoring 2.0. You want to do a few minutes on that and how people can? I think it'd be interesting both for people who are submitting for the call for submissions, to also, especially the early career folks, be a part of the mentorship program, and for those more seasoned in their career to be a part of mentoring someone else, because it is you know, learning how to navigate the academy, even if you're just a student. And I want to say just a student, but even if you're a student and you may not plan on going into teaching and research, you might be going into applied upon graduation. There's still so much that that one can gain from mentorship through this process, whether it's deciding on a particular topic for their presentation, or you know, there's some who are nervous about presenting for the first time at an academic conference, and being able to connect with someone throughout the year can help with that. But I won't speak for you. Let me get your thoughts on
So
mentoring
really, thank you
2.0.
for asking about that, Jarvis, because I think mentoring is one of those things that all of us do from the time we are old enough to be in a situation that we've actually had some experiences that other people are interested in understanding our experiences. So what I mean by that is, if I think back to my own background, I'm sure if you think back to your own background too, you were probably mentored by somebody who is a teacher in the past, somebody who may have been a person who ran the Boy Scouts, someone who was in your life that actually gave you an idea that if you pursue this road, it may be better for you than if you pursued that road. And I say that because we then become mentors for people behind us also. So mentorship is really one of those things that allow people to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of mattering, a sense of they can do certain things because they now see role models or people who have taken them under their wing that give them the opportunity to imagine, to believe, to dream. And a mentor is somebody who is there when you're in high times and in low times. And a mentor is somebody who guides you along a path, doesn't tell you necessarily what to do, but guides you. And it is tough to be a mentor sometimes because you oftentimes don't see immediate outcomes. I've been mentoring students for decades now, and what I've noticed is my greatest feelings happen to me when somebody 10 years down the road writes me an email that says, you know, we had a conversation 10 years ago. You probably don't remember the conversation, but here's what I decided to do after we had a conversation with you. And they give you their road that they've actually gone through, and here's where I am now today. You start to have a smile and you say, I really can't remember that conversation, but it was a conversation that was so impactful for them that actually caused them to potentially make different decisions than they were going to make before. So mentors do those sort of things. Mentors care. Mentors are people who are interested in what you're doing and are interested in helping you not make the same mistakes potentially that they have made in the past. And so the 2.0 mentoring process, we're going to be rolling it out this summer, has everything to do with creating partnerships between somebody who is more senior and someone who's more junior. And so it's very interesting when we've already done a survey and we've had over 36 people apply to be either mentors or mentees. And it's even people who are junior faculty who are also signed up and say they want to be mentored also, because they're not sure how to get from their position of being a junior faculty member to becoming a tenured faculty member. Similarly, we also have obviously undergraduate students asking the same kinds of questions. Well, how do I get to graduate school? Or how do I be successful in graduate school for the grad students who are also applying to this program? So what we're hoping for is we're hoping to create a program that is formal but informal. So what we want to do is take that list of people who've actually signed up so far, match them with somebody who's already signed up who may be a mentor for them, and then set up certain markers along the way as we get to the 2025 conference, where we'll check back in with the mentors and the mentees once we've matched them and we've encouraged them to get together virtually, so that they have regular check-ins with us to ensure that everything's going okay, and that the mentor-mentee relationship is unfolding in an evolutionary way, because it's, you know, not all mentors and mentees work out, right? So if it's not working out, we can also switch you up. But the point is, we're trying to figure out ways of having people who are not necessarily at your university, could be at any university, but once you have access to Zoom or some kind of communication ways, you can actually meet up with each other, have conversations that are not transactional. In other words, there's nothing to be gained by either side in terms of a monetary reward, but it's mainly a reward of, I'm talking to you because I'm worried about you, I'm concerned about you, I want to see you be successful, and I'm going to give you my ear and I'm going to give you my time. That's probably the most important and precious gift that I can give you, is my time to listen to you and be non-judgmental of you, and to try to work through any kinds of hurdles, barriers, concerns, questions you might have about being successful, as you said, Jarvis, in the academy. I'm a first-generation person. Neither of my parents actually went to university before me. However, my parents actually had friends in their circle of people who had gone to college. And so I was lucky enough when I was starting to make decisions around high school time that I could consult with a guidance counselor at high school, but also I had these friends of my parents who had actually gone to university and had finished a first degree. I could talk to them about choosing courses, or I could talk to them about just what life would be like at college and so forth. And that was a real benefit to me. When I did get into college and I started my college career as a first-year student and a second-year student at university, I was lucky enough to then have some professors. These were random individuals, in a sense, who saw something in me, who then became my temporary mentors as I went through. One of them actually ended up writing my recommendation letters for graduate school and so forth. But the point is, mentors can be any race, any ethnicity, any sexuality, any age. Once you have that desire and intention to be a person who is open to another human being and willing to give them the best of your time. So we're looking for more people to sign up in the mentoring program. We're also looking for people who want to be mentees. And I know Jarvis will probably send around another final call for people who want to sign up again in a couple of weeks. And then we'll start rolling this program out starting in September, where we'll have our first big meeting with everybody, meaning all the mentors and mentees, give them some directions, and then push them out in a sense that have them move along to set up those conversations like once a month, moving forward towards the conference. It's not a heavy tax, but it certainly is one that requires people to have a space where they can actually spend 30 minutes to an hour with each other, just having those conversations. So that's kind of the gist of it, setting up the ways in which we will have this program roll out. But it's also really important that people know that the PSA as an organization really cares about them. And one of the things that we found when we just did our annual survey of the post-conference is that that's one of the main attractive features of the PSA for a lot of people. That is, the PSA is an organization that creates an environment where people know that other people care about them. And so this is one of the reasons why a lot of people who have come to PSA meetings over and over and over again for sometimes decades at a time is because they feel like they're coming back to a family each time the conference is held, that they worry about other people who they met the year before and the years in subsequent nature. And they worry about them in terms of their success, their health, their decisions they're making, and so forth. And so, again, it becomes like a large, caring family that people like to be part of. It's one of the reasons why I've been in the PSA for almost 24 years. And I can count on other people who have certainly been there for that same time period or thereabouts. And when I see them coming through, we're all aging, but you see them coming through, and some of them have students in tow with them. Others have come and again, have been doing their topic area for a lot of years. And so they know the people in the topic area. And so they help each other out too. Because when a journal is being produced that they're editing or that they are part of some opportunity structure that they may be part of, but they can't do it, they'll write to somebody else who they've met at the PSA and say, hey, an opportunity may be coming up and I think you could actually fit into this. So all those things are really part of the PSA magic, as I'll call it, that's kept me and many others involved in the organization in ways that you really care. I guess the person who really set the tone for me, and I will say my mentor in all of this, was a faculty member named Dean Dorn. You may hear, you can continually hear that name because Dean actually mentored a lot of us as junior people coming through PSA, spending time with us, just talking about life, just talking about where we're headed. And so someone like Dean is in my opinion, part of the DNA of the PSA that I have known for 25 years. And I'm sure there was a character like Dean before Dean was around for the PSA, because as you all know, the PSA has been around for almost close to 100 years. So that's really
we are closing in on PSA 100.
we are, and so there would have been those Dean Dorns likely all the way through the history of PSA, and maybe he learned his mentoring and his ability to do what he does through somebody else who he, when he first joined the association in the early 70s, just like
we are definitely hopeful that he's able to come out to PSA 2025 in San Francisco.
right.
But we are definitely hopeful for that. And Dean is still very active. I talked to him about a month ago about some things around the archive. So Dean hasn't left. He's still on the on our emeritus and retired sociologist committee, and is still very active. And thank him for what he's done for the organization. But I hear some folks in the background, so I know I got to get you out.
Okay.
So that you can make this fly. But I first want to give a big round of applause to Dwaine Plaza, our president of the PSA. And we are excited for our call for submissions to open. Go to our website, PacificSoc.org, to see more information about the call for submissions and for the link to actually go to submit for the conference. Whether it is a presentation or a session, most folks are going to be more towards a presentation. So please go into that area, both for undergraduates and graduates, as well as if you want more information on Mentoring 2.0, go to PacificSoc.org and you can fill out your information there for that, and start getting ready, because the 96th annual PSA conference, also known as PSA 2025, will be at the Park 55, San Francisco, California. and it'll be March 27th through March 30th of 2025. And we look forward to seeing you all there. But now, let us go ahead and ceremoniously break the champagne glass and call the call for submissions for PSA 2025 to be open. Thank you, Dr. Plaza, and thank you to everyone watching out there, and continue to look for us here at PacificSoc Today. Thank you, and have a great, great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jarvis. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.